Number 3 of Day 9 Daily number 431, where we learn to be a better gamer. Oh! And because everyone asked in the break, the song that was playing is, get ready, it is, or was, this is the title, Farewell to the Former World by Blue Sky Black Death. Easy. Now let's go into the third game from Puma. Ha! In game number 2, we saw sort of a cool fast Banshee with no cloak play to kind of pin him back, force him to build a Viking, which gave us the opportunity to do all sorts of wonderful teching back home. On this game in Entombed Valley, we're going to see something a wee bit different. Aha. Yeah, there we go. Okay, cool. All looks good. Alright, let's blast through the start of the game. Okay, going gas first, following it up with a rather fast barracks. Subsequently, we're going to go ahead and get a kind of fast factory. The map is going to be Entombed Valley. I want to note that a map that has a ramp like this right by the entrance makes it a little harder to do some of these stim marine openings because it can be difficult to manage marines in this sort of alleyway when there might be, I don't know, a tank there barreling down. But a lot of tank Banshee mixes, ooh, sorry for the squeak. A lot of tank Banshee mixes are going to be quite effective as well. So we build our factory after we go gas 12, barracks 13, factory right when barracks finishes. And in this game, Puma is building many marines. Many. In the last game, you heard me talk about, oh, how wonderful, Hellions. We're getting lots of Hellions early on, so that way we can gobble up the space on this map. On this map, it's a little bit more difficult to do that reliably because we're so close. On a big distance map, I'd recommend Hellions, but on a smaller map like this, I like the idea of doing Marines. And of course you might be saying to yourself, no, I see a way to make that work. I would definitely love to be going Hellions in this case on this map. Totally great. Totally love it. I'm saying just some of the reasons why some people prefer to do a little bit more marining in one case or the other. So we're going to see Puma again follow this up with a nice mix of, oh, a nice mix of misclicks. Sorry, Day 9 blows it. A nice mix of Hellion Banshee, and this is kind of an unusual maneuver around the central watchtower. I'm sure you could probably do this tactic on other maps, but the important thing to note is that in terms of vision, Puma has not really seen much of anything at all. He's literally just one base shoving really early on. This is this style was actually originally performed by Greetorp in the beta days. Holy cow, was in like ancient. This is like one of the early weird swapperoos of Banshee Marine Hellion. And the reason that we like to do this little shove here is, for one, notice that this attack behaves kind of the same way that going just Hellion does. It's gobbled us up a lot of space on the minimap, enabling us to plant down our expansion right away. Still note, nothing too crazy going on at home with the buildings in the base. But we're going to try to poke up and do a little bit of damage. Generally, it's difficult to get a Banshee out earlier than the 6-minute mark, but when we push up to his ramp with this force, one of two things is going to happen. On one hand, we're going to run into a bunker. If we run into a bunker and a reactor or something like that, we're pretty certain that he's going for a very fast Banshee, and we can instantly build a Viking. Notice that even without seeing very much at all, we're still instantly going for a Viking. This is why I recommend this build quite a bit if you're kind of like newer or lost in the matchup. You just build the Viking. You just do it. So Puma gets the chance to poke up this ramp. If he sees a weak defense here, he can just break it. And remember in game number 1, way long ago, in game number 1, we were saying things like, use your Banshee to kill off units because you want your follow-up push to be really strong. It's not his economy you're trying to damage. Here, we want to try to kill off some units. Yeah, sure, that's great, but most importantly, we want to get some sort of vulnerability to kill off the workers. If we're expanding a little bit late, we definitely want to be trying to get a worker lead on him. So, tragically, we couldn't break it, but we got some great information. These sorts of pushes kill off a lot of openings, or damage a good bit of openings, especially when the Banshee shows up, as we'll see here in a moment, making it quite fun. Meanwhile, back home, we just get the add-ons to everything. After we're doing all this crazy pushing, we don't quite have the time to get ourselves extra unit-producing structures yet, so we're just gonna get all our add-ons. And still we're trying to see if we can maybe control this space, but MMA is doing just like the most balanced opening ever. Oh my god, I'm popular. Oh my god, I'm so popular. Okay, cool. Now at this point in time, I kind of want to just talk about what Puma is doing, as opposed to why it's so great and amazing. I'll talk some about that, but honestly this game ends kind of goofily with like a weird base trade-ish situation, and it's not standard, and you should generally force your games to be standard. But what I like about this opening that Puma does is that he goes for the Banshee and the Viking, and then he simply lifts the starport and he gives it to the tech lab, or he gives a barracks to this tech lab. And then he just starts on some tank marine production of his own. Certainly Puma will be behind on the siege upgrade, and that's okay, because we can easily kind of poach forward with our Hellions if we want to. We can get a lot of that vision control, and now we just go straight back into making the medevacs. And this is one of the most basic formations in a Terran vs. Terran. If you ever end up with 2 barracks, with the 2 add-ons, a factory with a tech lab, and a naked starport, you're doing something right. That is this is a great place to end up at. And of course an expansion, I guess is the other one. The next ingredient would generally be an engineering bay. In terms of upgrades, this is one of the last ones that you want to get, the siege mode tech. What's almost always better than siege mode is moving forward with your units. This allows you to spend more of your gas building the tanks than on getting a siege mode upgrade, waiting around, sieging up. Yeah, now the Hellions start to spring forward into action. Cool. Right now I can tell you, we're totally comfortable having no siege mode. Oh yes. Since we do have medevacs, getting stim first I think is great. In general, combat shield first, if you're going for an early expand opening, makes a lot of sense, because then we can take 3 Banshee hits with our Mariners, making us total badasses. This little move out with the Banshee, I'm always a little bit torn on. This is the sort of thing that can go awry pretty quickly, unless you have really fast reaction timing, because you'll notice Banshee move speed 2.75, Viking move speed 2.75. You can just run away if you end up in that awkward spot, but what we would like to do is maybe kill off a Marine or 2. Now, ignoring anything that ends up happening from here on out, we have a pretty nicely sized army. This Banshee actually bolsters the strength of it quite a bit, because this Banshee we can use to pick off his tanks. We've also been producing a lot of tanks the whole time as well. So we should have maybe equal, maybe more tanks, but most importantly, because we've been so aggressive all game long, we know he has a defensive setup. And we then can exploit that. This is a nice move by Puma. He's actually just moving in with a drop as he moves up with this. The main goal of what Puma's doing here is to advance forward and siege up and just put kind of some pressure here on Entombed Valley. There's this big wide open expanse, which is where it's good to siege up tanks. And now I would want to answer that question of, well, hey, when would I want to go tanks with this opening, as opposed to going for the 3 barracks that we saw in part 2? And the answer is if you have an area where you can walk to and siege up and sort of rain down on the expo. Also, the fact that there's this little tiny choke here means that if we can siege up anywhere in range of this choke, we are in such amazing shape. So this little drop play kind of allows us to pull some of his units back. However, none of that stuff ever happens, and we just see a crazy base trade, which I'll totally give you the pleasure of watching, but the important thing is that this attack happens right as Stim is finishing up. Puma is going to be sort of gently pulling back. He has the ability to lead with the Banshee. His medevac is doing some dropping to continue to pull his opponent back. That's wonderful, but this is not normal. This is pretty weird of a situation to be in. Both players are being pretty adamant about trying to ensure that this sort of thing didn't happen, where you're in my base when I'm in your base kind of thing. But either way, when we watch it at ×2, Puma sieges up. Does a lot of good damage. And says, cool! Now I'm going to take questions, then I'm going to go to dinner. What a normal day this was. What a normal daily. We're going to do yet another normal daily tomorrow. I would love to get my hands on those Stefano Polt replays from Lone Star Classic. I don't know if those are anywhere. If anyone has a link to those replays, I would be much obliged. Because I am, in fact, not some kind of deformed superhero that has super replay tracking abilities. Instead, I am but a nerd as you are, and I Google things. But my Google didn't work. My Google didn't work. Oh. Whoops, I said Lone Star Classic instead of Lone Star Clash. Whoops. Let me start the Markio question grabber. The Lone Star Classic. It reminds me of the old time, the TG Sambo Intel Classic. Oh, Raunchy's in here. Hey, what up, Raunchy? Any of you who have never seen Raunchy animations, you totally should. Just look up Zerg Reporter on YouTube. Okay, so here's a great question from EP Mist. It says, Day 9, if you go Combat Shield first, would you move out when it finishes 2? As a general rule, the best times to attack are when something important finishes. So, for instance, it's almost easy to think of it in the contrast. If you have 2/2 upgrades and you attack when they're 75% complete, then when the attack's over, you have 2/2 and no army. So, if you think about your army before an attack and after an attack, before the attack is when the army is the biggest it will be the whole game, is always before an attack. So if you finish an upgrade right before the attack, it is as strong and as big as it will be. Yeah. That said, when big upgrade finishes, or when big upgrades finish, that doesn't mean that you must attack for some reason. You just want to line your attacks up with when upgrade finishes, or when upgrades finish. So for instance, let's say, I guess I should also say that, how do I word that? Yeah, it's not that an upgrade's finishing. It's not like, well, shit, my combat shield finished. I have to move out. It's that if you're at 80% done and you want to attack, wait until the combat shield's finished. So, back to the question of, if you got combat shield first, would you move out when it finishes? It depends largely on the situation and what I'm trying to accomplish. It's so situational that you have to make sure that you have a good reason for it. So I'll go through some. Let's say we're in a Terran versus Terran, and he's going kind of Marine heavy, and I'm going kind of Marine heavy, but I get my combat shield earlier than him. Then I want to push right when it finishes, because I want to hit him when I have combat shield and he doesn't. In Terran vs. Zerg, if I'm expanding and I'm doing a Blue Flame Hellion Marine push, my Marines are dying too easily to Ling Baneling, so I'm going to do a build that lets me get combat shield right when I'm moving out to do that push. That way, I can sustain a hit from Banelings and still be able to withstand the Zerglings that wrap around. These sorts of things. Or dead. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Did you see that? Did you see that? My encoder froze. I'm good, right? If I'm good, say foot. Say foot. Okay. Why did it keep freezing? Foot. Okay, good. Yeah, I'm just going to go into another question. Oh, great question from Raggy. Says, what is the Fun Day Monday topic for next week? You may have one pylon and one pylon alone that powers all your important structures. Other pylons may be used for warpins. Other pylons may have cannons on them. But only one pylon may power all your important structures. And that pylon may not be in your main base. Yes. Yes! Let's see here. I'm just going to do 2 more questions. What constitutes a vital structure? Not a cannon. Not a cannon. The question grabber is not grabbing some. Oh, so here's a question. Saw owner says, Day 9, in that last game, Puma got the expansion later. His tank production was later. He did no damage with his Banshee. What exactly was it that gave him that lead? The big advantage that he gets in that situation is that in what's his face's position, in MMA's position, MMA literally has to build a very defensive kind of protect all army. He has to get a Viking out, sometimes 2. He has to get a lot of Marines and tanks out if he's doing that nice mixture. He has to, most importantly, delay a lot of his upgrades. He's not at like Stim, Combat Shield, +1 attack. He doesn't have a good attacking mixture, and he doesn't have a good map control mixture. So Puma, although he is a little bit behind on all those, the follow-up push from Puma can start out by moving farther forward because he has that map control. He knows that his opponent can't have a certain amount of upgrades. The Banshee is already a good attacking unit. It's not a really good defending unit. Also, here's my knee. So it was the timing of that attack that was quite strong. And if you actually go back and look at that game, then you see that MMA had like equal in all categories and was a little bit behind on the tank production. So let me see. Last one, and then I'm going to go. Rockwell SC says, Day 9, since in the first game we scout late with this build on TvT, what happens if a cheese play occurs with proxy Raxes or something? That is one of the greatest parts about a very fast factory opening. You get the Hellion out you get your factory out so quickly that you can get a Hellion out very, very early on, and you can do some really easy just mass repair action on the Hellion. You have to be a little bit careful. You have to have good micro, but either way, the important part about this build is that it's pretty cheese-proof. It's really, really safe to a lot of 2 Raxes. And if you don't believe me, try it. I'm going to go now. Dinner time for Day 9. Oh, yeah, see you in Columbus. See you in Columbia.